I remember drawing dinosaurs a lot as a kid, being fascinated with how cool they looked, especially from Jurassic Park and the like. And then last year I was at the Natural History Museum nearby, where they had a chocolate and cheese festival with some local cheesemongers and chocolate vendors on display. With chocolate on the mind, then walking through the fossil displays at the museum, I was thinking a lot of these bones are dark brown color. It looks like they should be made of chocolate. And I searched for it, and no one else had ever made chocolate dinosaurs before, so I decided to make chocolate dinosaurs. These skeletons are made mostly out of modeling chocolate. Modeling chocolate is a fantastic medium. It's basically a chocolate clay. You make modeling chocolate by melting a bunch of chocolate and then mixing it with corn syrup. Ratio is about half a cup of corn syrup per pound of chocolate. I also like making it with honey instead of corn syrup. That gives it a really good flavor. But after you mix it, then you let it sit and cool until it sets up to the consistency of something like a Tootsie Roll. And like a Tootsie Roll, you get it in the heat of your hands and you warm it up. It becomes pliable and you can roll it out and make all sorts of shapes that would be so much harder to make with solid chocolate. It can be tricky to work with sometimes. You might have to microwave it a little bit to get it soft enough and warm enough, or you might have to knead it a lot to get it really smooth, or you might have to add more corn syrup to get the right consistency, and it can get very messy very quickly, but it's a lot of fun. Most of the bones of these skeletons were made with this modeling chocolate. For example, the leg bones and the hips, starting out with just a chunk and then pressing it out into the general shape, and then sometimes carving them further with a knife as needed. Also very useful were wood carving tools. Those helped a lot in adding details. Thin pieces like the rib bones had snakes rolled out for them, curled up into the shape and let them set up. For the toes, made small snakes and then put individual toe details on with the wood carving tools. The vertebrae pieces were made by starting with one long piece in the general shape and then cutting out each individual piece and carving and shaping as needed. The skulls needed the most detail, so I decided to carve those out of solid chocolate instead of the modeling chocolate. I made a batch of properly tempered chocolate, then poured those into some molds so that I'd have a nice big piece to work off of. And after that, it was just a whole lot of whittling, carving the shapes with knives, and definitely those wood carving tools. This part of the process makes a pretty big mess as well, and I had to make sure that the chocolate didn't start melting in my hands, and also being very careful with my fingers with some of the delicate parts of the skulls that were very thin. I had to repair at least a few times on the Allosaurus. And then using tiny pieces of leftover shavings to add for the teeth. To make sure these pieces were properly supported and wouldn't fall over under their own weight, I decided to use some floral wire and run that down the length of the spine. This would provide a sturdy base to work off of for assembly, and I would add more additional supports as needed. I carved the vertebrae detail into the spine and then attached that to the base, which for the base I just used a whole bunch of the modeling chocolate to make a solid ground piece, and then with the spine pieces attached to that, then it was simply a matter of assembling all the pieces to fit. All of the individual bones were connected together using freshly melted chocolate as glue. I would dab a little piece on, stick it together, and then used a specialty chocolate freezing spray, which made the joints set up instantly and made assembly pretty smooth. Well, pretty smooth except for the part where I knocked the Allosaurus head off accidentally, but no big deal, just pop it back on. So other than the wire running down the spine and the other supports, these are completely edible, and they won't melt as long as they're kept at room temperature. Each of these skeleton figures took about 12 hours to make, and it was a lot of work, but a lot of fun. I'm really pleased with the way these turned out, and who knows what I'll make next.